Would you believe that in some places around the world in 2026, you can still have a hot meal for less than the price of a coffee in America? This isn't about travel hacks to save money. This isn't about going for a fun few days. These are places where daily eating and basic transportation are genuinely cheap. While in many major cities, living costs rise faster than wages, there are still places where your money goes further than you'd think. But what makes me think the most isn't the numbers. It's this question: why do these places still maintain low costs while the rest of the world doesn't? Is it because of lower living standards, or because people there live in a completely different way? And if you're an American tired of gas prices, food costs, and daily transportation expenses, are these places really worth considering? In today's video, we'll explore the top 10 places where food and transport are still cheap in 2026. Not through advertisements, but through real comparisons, everyday life examples, and perspectives from people who have lived, traveled, and paid money there. Please stay until the end of the video, because the place ranked number 1 on this list isn't just cheaper than you think, it might also make you rethink how you're living every day. Number 10, Philippines. The Philippines is often mentioned for its beaches and tropical islands. But what surprises many people more is that daily food and transportation costs remain quite low, especially if you live outside high-end tourist areas. In many cities like Cebu, Dumaguete, or Iloilo, a full local meal, rice, meat, vegetables, usually costs only about $2 to $4. Even when eating out regularly, monthly food expenses are still significantly lower than the average in America, where a fast food meal can easily exceed $10 to $12. For transportation, the Philippines still maintains a very cheap vehicle system. A jeepney ride, a popular local bus type, usually costs only 20 to 40 cents for short distances within the city. Buses and tricycles also have similar prices, allowing locals and foreigners to move daily without needing to own a private vehicle. Of course, in famous tourist areas or central Manila, prices can be higher. But if you choose the right place and adapt to the local pace of life, the Philippines remains a clear example that basic costs can be low without sacrificing too much quality of life. Number 9, Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka isn't a place where everything happens quickly, and that's exactly what helps keep daily costs here quite comfortable. In cities like Kandy or Gala, a local meal of rice, curry, and vegetables usually costs only about $1.50 to $3. Fresh fruits, tea, and home-cooked dishes are priced much lower than in other South Asian countries with large tourist volumes. For transportation, Sri Lanka is one of the few places where trains and buses remain extremely cheap. A train journey lasting several hours between cities usually costs only 50 cents to $1.50. Domestic buses are even cheaper, though they're not always on time. Compared to America, where gas, insurance, and vehicle maintenance costs can run hundreds of dollars per month, getting around in Sri Lanka creates almost no financial pressure. Of course, a slow pace means you need more patience. But for many people, this simplicity is what keeps living costs from being pushed too high. Number 8, Cambodia. Cambodia is one of the few Southeast Asian countries where eating out remains the most economical choice, rather than a luxury. In Phnom Penh or Siem Reap, street food like rice, noodles, and soup typically costs $1.50 to $3. Even when eating at small restaurants for foreigners, costs rarely exceed $5 for a full meal. Transportation is also relatively simple. A tuk-tuk ride within the city usually ranges from $1 to $2, while monthly motorbike rental is only about $40 to $60. This helps locals and foreigners control transportation costs very well. Compared to major tourist cities in Thailand, Cambodia has less price inflation, especially outside crowded central areas. Cambodia isn't glamorous, but living costs here still accurately reflect the income levels and actual needs of the people. Number 7, Indonesia. Indonesia is a perfect example of how costs depend not just on the country, but on lifestyle. Outside the crowded tourist areas of Bali, cities like Yogyakarta or Surabaya still maintain very low prices. A local meal typically costs only about $1.50 to $3, with rice, vegetables, and meat prepared simply but adequately. Transportation is mainly by motorbike, with rental costs around $50 to $70 per month. Gas is cheap, and distances within cities are usually short, making daily transportation costs almost negligible. However, if living in areas serving international tourism, costs can increase quickly. Indonesia is still cheap, but only truly so when you live close to local life. Number 6. Guatemala. Guatemala isn't a place that often appears on luxury travel lists, but that's exactly what helps keep living costs here quite comfortable. In cities like Antigua or Quetzaltenango, a traditional meal of rice, beans, eggs, or chicken usually costs only about $2 to $3. Eating out isn't a luxury, but a daily habit of the locals. For transportation, Guatemala has a local bus system, often called chicken buses. Fares for trips within the city or between neighboring towns usually cost only 25 cents to $1, much lower than transportation costs in America, where even a short trip by personal vehicle consumes several dollars in gas. Guatemala isn't always convenient or modern, but for those who prioritize low basic costs and simple living, this remains a choice worth considering. Number 5. Nicaragua. Nicaragua is one of the least mentioned Central American countries, and that partly helps keep prices here from rising too quickly. In cities like Granada or Leon, a full local meal usually costs only about $2 to $4. Traditional markets provide fresh food at low prices, making home cooking even more economical. Nicaragua's domestic bus system is also very cheap. A trip within the city usually costs only 30 to 50 cents, while interprovincial trips rarely exceed $2 to $3, even for journeys lasting several hours. Compared to neighboring Costa Rica, where living costs have increased sharply over the past decade, Nicaragua still maintains noticeably lower daily expenses, especially in food and transportation. Of course, life here requires flexibility and local knowledge, but for those who prioritize cost, Nicaragua still shows that eating and transportation don't have to be expensive. Number 4. Mexico. Mexico is often viewed through the tourism lens, but when you move away from resort areas, daily living costs tell a very different story. In residential areas of Mexico City, Puebla, or Mérida, a comida corrida, including soup, main course, and drink, usually costs only about $3 to $5. This is a common lunch format for local workers, both filling and economical. For transportation, Mexico has an efficient and cheap public transportation system. A metro ride in Mexico City costs only about 25 cents, while buses and Metrobus have similar prices. Compared to car transportation costs in America, the savings are very clear. Mexico isn't cheap on every street corner, but when living close to local life, food and transportation costs here still maintain a very noteworthy balance. Number 3. Laos. Laos isn't a place that overwhelms you from the first visit, but this simplicity is what keeps living costs here very low. In cities like Luang Prabang or Vientiane, a local meal of rice, vegetables, meat, or fish usually costs only about $1.50 to $3. Eating out isn't an expensive choice but a common habit of the people. Transportation in Laos is also quite economical. Inner-city buses cost about 30 to 60 cents per trip, while interprovincial buses usually range from $2 to $5, even for journeys lasting several hours. The new train line connecting Laos and China makes travel faster, while fares remain low by international standards. Compared to America, where gas, insurance, and private vehicle ownership can exceed $700 to $900 per month, getting around in Laos creates almost no financial pressure. Of course, convenience isn't always perfect, but for those who value low costs and slow living, Laos shows that simplicity is sometimes the biggest advantage. Number 2. Thailand. Thailand has become too familiar to international travelers. What's noteworthy is that even with its fame, food and transportation costs still maintain comfortable levels if you live outside expensive central areas. In Chiang Mai, Udon Thani, or Nakhon Ratchasima, popular street food costs about $1.50 to $3. A full meal at a local restaurant rarely exceeds $4 to $5, much lower than eating out costs in America. For transportation, Thailand has a quite flexible system. Inner-city buses usually cost only 30 to 60 cents per trip, while monthly motorbike rental hovers around $60 to $80. This makes daily transportation costs almost negligible. Many Americans living in Chiang might share that their total monthly food and transportation costs equal only a few days of spending in a major US city. Thailand isn't cheap in every area, but with the right location choice, basic costs here still maintain a very rare balance. Number 1. Vietnam's. Vietnam tops this list not just because it's cheap, but because of the balance between price, convenience, and daily quality of life. In Hanoi, Da Nang, or Ho Chi Minh City, a local meal like pho, rice, or bun usually costs only about $1.50 to $3. Coffee, drinks, and snacks are so cheap that many people consider them costs they don't need to think about. Transportation is a clear strength. Ride-hailing services like Grab allow you to move around the city for $1 to $3 per short trip. Public buses are even cheaper, usually only 30 cents per trip. Not needing to own a private vehicle significantly reduces monthly costs compared to America. Vietnam isn't perfect for everyone, but when it comes specifically to food and transportation, very few places in 2026 offer value as clear as here. 10 locations, 10 very different ways of living, but all show one thing quite clearly: food and transportation costs don't always have to come with financial pressure. While in many places, prices rise faster than people's ability to adapt, there are still countries that maintain balance through simple lifestyles, suitable transportation systems, and consumption habits tied to local life. This video isn't meant to encourage you to leave where you're living, but to open a different perspective. If one day you want to slow down, spend less, and live closer to basics, the world still has many choices. Each location on this list has its own advantages and limitations. What matters is understanding what fits your pace of life, work, and expectations. If you've ever been to, or are living in, one of these places, please share your experience in the comments. And if you find this content useful, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to explore more real perspectives on life around the world.